Hi everyone, I'm Isabella.
And I'm Sophia, and we're so excited for you to listen to this virtual conference highlighting women in business.
We interviewed a number of inspirational women in this industry where they shared their insights and gave advice on how to succeed in finance.
The message we are trying to convey through these interviews is that there are endless possibilities in finance.
We would also like to thank all of the participants and our sponsors for supporting this event.
We hope you've enjoyed this International Women's Day conference.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. You're the CEO and co-founder of DealMaker, one of the fastest growing companies in Canada. Can you provide an overview of DealMaker and what exactly the company does?
For sure. So DealMaker is a pioneering force in the world of investing. We're on a mission to make online capital raising mainstream. So 5 years from now, I want every founder to know that they actually have 3 options for capital, not 2, like a lot of them currently think. They can raise with a broker-dealer, they can raise from venture capital, or they can raise from a community. And everyone has a community, and we can help them raise from that community digitally.
It sounds like a very successful and innovative company. Are you able to expand on what online digital capital raising is?
Yeah. So digital raising is basically when companies power capital raising online. So it's a method of financing when you take that community or mailing list or people who are fans of your business and what you're doing, and you turn that social capital into actual investor capital. So if you look at a lot of the movements today and the companies that are really successful, right? You've got Taylor Swift, you've got Mr. Beast. These people have been able to achieve so much in such a short time because they know and understand their community really well. And they know how to give perks and they know how to interact with the people who are following them to create an army of brand ambassadors around what they're doing and to make that what they're doing go viral. And so any entrepreneur can take that same concept and use it to build a following around their business so that they can use that influence of the group of people that are supporting them to not only give them capital, and when they do that, that creates 54% more engagement with the brand, but now people become a brand ambassador for you as well and help propel your business forward. So maybe they're beta users of your product, or maybe you have a referral program where they send you a friend, or maybe they just post about it online because they're excited about the fact that they're a shareholder in your company and they love what you're doing, and that continues to get you more brand equity.
I like how you related it back to Taylor Swift and Mr. Beast. I think it makes it easier for our viewers to understand. And what was the catalyst for starting DealMaker?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that in a second, but I think the other one that makes it really easy for people to understand is the Green Bay Packers common stock offering. So most people may or may not know that the Green Bay Packers are the only fan-owned team in the NFL. So last year, when they wanted to raise money to build a new stadium, we set up their online store and they raised $65 million from the fans. And there's a reason that the Green Bay Packers is one of the most valuable brands in the NFL because they have a die-hard group of cheeseheads who are so engaged with what that team is doing because they're owners of the team.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So catalyst for starting DealMaker, it was probably 6 years ago now. It feels like a lifetime though. I saw a problem in the market that I wanted to solve. And it was something that I've always worked on the entrepreneur side. When I was in the law firm for over a decade, I built a practice around supporting entrepreneurs getting financing. And so I saw a problem with them getting access to financing. I saw a problem with how hard it was and how cumbersome the process was. And I knew that that was exactly what technology is here to fix. It can take something that's very complex and you can code it up in the background and make it smooth and easy. And the thing I love about technology is once you do that and once you put that out into the world, everything builds on top of that in rapid iteration. So you put a product out into the world and you never quite know how users are going to use it. And that's what happened with DealMaker. We essentially built a digital back office for people when they were raising money, and they started really running with it and asking for all kinds of new and different things like perks that they could offer to their communities to really create that engagement.
That's so interesting. And I agree. I feel like especially in this day and age, technology has been so prominent, and I think it's just going to continue to grow and expand into different job positions. And Rebecca, you've had a very successful career as a corporate lawyer and starting DealMaker. What skills or characteristics made you successful as both a lawyer and now as a CEO of your company?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. There's a lot, but I think for me, number one is hard work. And hard work doesn't feel like hard work when you're passionate about what you do. So if you can find those two things, I think those are the key traits that will help breed success.
I agree. And it sounds like a very demanding yet so rewarding starting your own business. So what challenges did you have to overcome when starting your own business?
There's a lot of different things, but I really don't look at it like challenges. I just think of it as, rocks that you need to move out of the way. So I think back for me in the early days, and what a lot of people think about it when they're starting a business is the risk. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can focus in on what you want to accomplish and how you want to spend your days, then risk doesn't feel like risk. It feels like opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I assume that you've worked with and hired many successful employees. What are the most important characteristics that you look for during the hiring process?
So for us, what we're looking for is something that's not on the resume. So that I can distill down into EQ and AQ. And I think AQ is a concept that people don't talk about enough today, but it's really the most important trait that a person can have when they're going out into the workforce. So AQ is your adaptability quotient. It's your ability to move through the fast pace and change. And that is the definition of being in tech as an industry. And it's how you can drive innovation. So we aim to foster that culture that brings out people's AQ across our organization. It's really people that can adapt and pivot and learn from their mistakes. If you fall, you get up and you try again. And that's really how tech works. We're constantly testing things. Out of 5 tests we run, 4 of them are going to fail. Can you pick up the learnings from that, not be fazed by that, and move on to learn and grow? That's really why tech's taking over the world. It's that ability to innovate. And at the heart of that is AQ, or people with a high adaptability quotient that are able to learn and pivot and move on quickly and take new viewpoints, adapt them into their own, and create something brand new out of that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it just puts you at an advantage because you're able to be creative and think about things outside of the box. And I think that's what a lot of employers are looking for.
Yeah, it makes work really fun for the right people. EQ is a great complement to that because it allows people to operate cohesively when there's pressure and run really fast, but be mindful of others while they do that. So that just makes it a really nice place to work, which is what motivates everyone.
Mm-hmm. And adding on to that, what do you think is more important, marks or personality and passion?
So when we're hiring, we hire for skills. Mm-hmm. So sometimes grades can reflect the skill, like are you detail-oriented, diligent, or timely, but sometimes they don't at all. So generally for us, we're hiring more years out, so grades aren't really part of what we review, but I think grades can play a role in how a person gets to where they are. But I don't think you can say that grades matter exclusively, because without AQ and EQ and fit, skills become irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. I feel like grades could be the foundation, and then having the passion and drive to succeed at something, and the need to accomplish it just puts you at a higher pedestal, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I come back to hard work and being passionate, because that's the way you're going to be able to accomplish it.
And Rebecca, you've worked as a corporate lawyer, now running your own business. What is it you like most about finance and capital markets?
So to me, capital markets are where all the massive change in the world is driven from. If you look at all of the biggest new companies, those are always financed. So that always appealed to me about the capital markets, is being close to that massive change in the world and being close to that greatness. You're on the ground floor of getting to work on new ideas and innovations and help get those off the ground. For example, 3 of the customers we're working with right now are on Time Magazine's list of best inventions for 2023. We've got Rise Naki earbuds and global air cylinder wheels, all amazing technology. All of our customers are building amazing things, but those are super cool 3 to being highlighted right now. And it's just a privilege to get to work so closely with those kinds of founders every day.
It must be so satisfying to see that your top customers are doing so well.
It really is, because that's part of the change that we're making in the world, is helping them get off the ground and accomplish what they want to do. And at the same time, giving access to new investment opportunities to people who wouldn't normally get them. Before, some of the ways that DealMaker helps people get finance from the community, these kinds of investments were only available to high net worth people. Now we help everyday Americans get access to these investments so that they can make bigger gains. So it's nice for the entrepreneurs who get more access to funding, and it's nice for investors to get access to these exciting companies.
And Rebecca, throughout your career, have you had someone that you looked up to and learned from? And what did that mentor teach you?
So for me, I don't think a mentor is one person. I take a philosophy of trying to learn something from every interaction and from every person that I work with. Everyone has different strengths, and I really like to see what those are and try to emulate some of them. So everyone has a different perspective that they bring to the world and expertise. I like to say at DealMaker, everyone's the boss of their own job, and they have a duty to be the leader in that field. They're the person at our company that's running that function. And so whether they're in engineering or digital marketing, it's always inspiring to me to see people take ownership of their roles and see what they can do when they seize that opportunity.
I really like that. I feel like you mentioned, everyone has their own expertise. So being able to learn from someone who is has more experience in one field than another is just really good, because it builds up your resume, I guess, as well, and your understanding.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you've learned so much throughout the years. If you had to give your 20-year-old self advice, what would it be?
I would say take more risk. There's so much opportunity today to build something compelling really fast that can change the course of your life. And especially in the early days, just take more risk. Don't be afraid.
I like that. And Rebecca, you're a young mother and the CEO of a successful company. How do you balance it all?
I think there's a lot of different ways or tips or tricks that people can do. But the number one for me is being very purposeful in what I'm willing to spend my time on and being okay with saying no. I think a lot of women struggle with that, but you can't agree to every call, every meeting, every initiative. You have to be very focused on where you do want to spend your time, and then you have to say no to everyone else so that you're owning your time and owning your calendar. And when I learned to do that, I realized the results that I could get for my company and for myself were much better because I was spending my time in the most productive way.
And adding on to that, I think that a lot of women also struggle with like asking for help when it's needed. So I feel like being able to ask for help and also just say no is very important.
A lot of women want to make people happy, and I think you can do that better when you say no.
And Rebecca, you lead a very busy lifestyle. What do you do outside of work to relieve your stress?
I spend time with my family. I play with my kids. We just took them skiing this weekend. So anything that can be physical and get us outside. We have a new little puppy. I advocate that. He's amazing.
And Rebecca, as we wrap up, what advice would you give to young women who want to enter the finance industry or perhaps start their own business?
I think there's three main ones I would want to leave people with. Number one, bet on yourself. Don't place the worth of your ideas on the opinions of others. Number two, find your passion. It makes every day a pleasure. And number three, I think women have a superpower of ongoing learning and humility. That's their superpower, so you can use it.
Thank you for advice. I greatly enjoyed this discussion, and thank you for spending time with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Hi, Joanna. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Great initiative you're taking.
You have had a very extensive career working in consulting and wealth management, and you were most recently at Fidelity as head of personal investing. Can you provide an overview of Fidelity and what exactly your role was there?
Sure. So on the Fidelity side, Fidelity is a global firm, but it's heavily US based, and its headquarters is in Boston. And essentially what Fidelity is it's an asset manager, which also has very large retail operations and workplace operations that really focus on both helping individuals, families, as well as institutions in managing money. And they do so through a variety of ways. What I did at Fidelity was a role called the head of personal investing. It was the president of personal investing. And it was basically being in charge of the wealth management, which is advice, planning, as well as a number of different more retail avenues, like in brokerage for about 20 million customers. We had about 30,000 employees, and it was really helping them make a meaningful difference in their lives and reach their goals.
And that sounds quite large. How did you manage all of those investors?
Well, we had a big team. Again, we had 30,000 people, and that really is split between those who are helping investors on a day-to-day basis. It may be talking to them through the phone, through social media even, or in person, but also a large team who was helping on all of the middle and back end of things, because obviously it's a big operation. It needs strong technology, strong products, great research. And so we had a very strong team that was running all of that day to day, and I had the privilege of working with them.
And when you began your career, why did you choose wealth management over investment banking or research?
Well, if I'm back up, actually, the first choice I made after my JD and MBA degree was to go into consulting, and that's really was my first entry point. And on the consulting side at McKinsey, they told you to take what was called a random walk, and the idea was spending a couple of years just getting to know the business space, especially for those of us who didn't have as much experience before and exposure to the business world. What I found really quickly was I liked wealth management and asset management for a couple of reasons. One is I love the focus on the customer. That just resonated, making a difference for customer challenges, for families, solving their problems, whether it was directly for them or frankly, some of the technology or product or other challenges. I wanted to make a difference on that. But really, one of the things that I learned from the experience was who you work with matters just as much as any challenge you're facing or problem you're solving. You spend a lot of hours in the working world, and really who I was working with at the time, which was my first couple of projects at McKinsey, really excited me and inspired me. And so that's really what brought me to the financial services side and therefore wealth management, which just became a pattern in my career.
That's so amazing. And you were also chief marketing officer and head of strategy at BMO for a few years, which seems so different from what you did elsewhere. How did you go from law to marketing?
Well, I was a summer law student, and I did get my call to the bar, but really never pursued my law career after that. There are laws an amazing field. I'm married to somebody who was a lawyer for many years. But what I found was I wanted to be at the front end of a transaction as well as executing it. And I wanted to have just more breadth in terms of my opportunities. And I found the business world just really let me have that. And, consulting in spades let me do that because it let me really focus on a number of areas and problems to solve. You never had a boring day, which was really important for me. And then I got to really experience different careers, including the wealth management and financial services space. Strategy at BMO was really an extension of that. I was lucky in that BMO was one of my clients when I was at McKinsey, and I got a call saying, would you like to come in and work directly? And then I had the chance to do both strategy and execution.
And you've worked in this industry for quite some time. What is it you like most about finance and capital markets?
I would go back to finance and capital markets are really interesting spaces for me because you're really at the heart of it solving a customer's problems. And what I love about finance is you're solving money problems. And whether it's about investing for the future or dealing with a hardship, maybe you need to take out a loan, or maybe you've got multi-generational wealth. Multi-generational wealth still has issues, and sometimes it's how to leave a legacy. It's helping the next generation. And what I loved about that was just making a difference for that family or that individual, whether you were investing for them and managing their money or creating different products and innovating for them or something completely different. And what I find more and more is the world is very integrated. And now, especially with technology and data, you can solve problems for families and for customers in a variety of different ways. And I love that you can have that multifunctional approach too in finance.
It's amazing that you're able to help people in this industry because I think sometimes it doesn't seem like you can. So it's nice that you're able to combine business and people.
Absolutely.
And
can I come back to one thing that you said before, which is you said marketing was very different than finance. And what I loved about marketing was it was just basically blending the same challenges together, but in the financial context. And so how do you help somebody understand that there might be a solution to the problem that they're facing? One of the most common things I got asked in wealth management is, well, isn't wealth management just for rich people? And frankly, when I look at whether it was at BMO or Fidelity or other institutions, a lot of the time we can actually help families without a lot of wealth and help them to grow their wealth and frankly preserve their wealth or help them in hardships. And so to me, marketing was just a great opportunity to do that. Of course, in some cases in ads, but also using analytics to help really match people with what might make a difference for them.
And what would you say are the benefits of working for a large firm like Fidelity or BMO versus a smaller firm?
The question of larger firms is an interesting one. So my background would be I worked at McKinsey and then BMO and Fidelity. So you could argue I've worked at three different firms, but larger firms. What I would say what's attracted to me to them through time is it confers a few benefits. I think one, and maybe the most obvious one, is resources. So if you have an idea, you can really invest against your idea because the firm has the resources to be able to do that. But then there, I think, are career things that can make a difference. For example, you have more opportunity to have formal training, whether that's internal programs or frankly, the backing to be able to go outside. Career paths. I'm somebody who has always really sought out, I never want to have a boring day. I've never had a boring day in my career. But some of that is because when I was ready for another opportunity, there were different paths in the firms that I was at. I think the final thing is really people. I love working with people. We're all different, but I'm the type of person who really likes face-to-face interactions. And at all of those firms, every day I was meeting new people. And that's kind of fun as well.
That's amazing. It's so great that you're able to mix what you love and what you're passionate about working with people and your career.
Absolutely.
And something that I hear all the time is the importance of having a mentor. So I'm wondering if you've had a lot of mentors in your career and what that person has taught you.
Yeah, mentorship is a great question. And I've been fortunate to have many different mentors. The thing I always start with mentors is know the difference between mentors and sponsors. And when I think about sponsors are the person that mentors can give you advice. You ask a question, they'll give you answers. You may take that advice, you may not. It may unbear, and rinse and repeat. What a sponsor does that's over and above that is you may leave the room and not be in the room when you're being talked about, considered for an opportunity, and they're the ones who are pounding the table for you in your absence. And so my best piece of advice and how I think I was fortunate was at the right time, I had those sponsors. And so I would tell people to really think about, do you have mentors or do you have sponsors? And a combination of the two are really important. And I got some great mentorship advice along the way at different points in my career, but I think that's a really important element. The other thing I would say on that topic is sponsors and mentors, well, maybe less sponsors, but mentors can be, they don't always have to be somebody more senior in tenure to you. I had considered myself to be really fortunate through, especially as I got more senior and there's fewer and fewer people in a company who might be in the position to mentor. I consider some people who were peers of mine as mentors. I consider people who reported to me to be mentors. And in that case, they gave me great advice, feedback, as well as sometimes straight talk and tough love when I needed it.
That's amazing. And you've had such a successful career. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
My 20-year-old self, I would say, I think when you're in your 20s, with few exceptions, especially women, I would say, you tend to look around a room, whether it's your peers in a classroom or whether it's in your early working days, and you think, everybody else just knows more than me. Maybe you think they're smarter than me. And especially in meeting rooms or maybe in the classroom setting, you feel like somebody would have said my idea if it was a good one. Someone would have raised their hand and asked that question if it was a good one. And I know in my early 20s, how many times I would stay quiet because I just felt like there was no doubt that somebody else would have had a better answer. And what I learned through time is that's not true. And you have to put yourself out there. And so I would tell my 20-year-old self, put yourself out there, take the chance. People are busy thinking about themselves most of the day. So the worst case scenario is you raise a point and it's wrong, which isn't usually, or it's a little off the mark. They'll forget it because they're thinking about themselves anyway. You could really take more chances and put yourself out there and take a seat at the table and really know your worth through that.
I love that piece of advice. I really resonate with that. I talk to my friends about this all the time, but I know in a university setting, it can be really intimidating to ask questions in class, but then we kind of all talk after, and even if we say the wrong answer, you don't really remember who did that. So I agree. Take the chance.
Yeah. And I would say, think about the people around the table. Can you even remember what their contributions were? And so you really realize you can take a chance, because worst case, it probably just will be forgotten a moment later. Best case, you might have really offered something to that room that really pushes the issue forward, which is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. And so you mentioned earlier that you were in charge of 30,000 advisors, and that must have been a very stressful job. How do you manage to balance your career and family life?
Sure. So 30,000, it was employees. It wasn't just advisors. So everything from technology and product to people who were more face-to-face with customers, just to clarify. But how I always thought about work and life, first of all, I will say, I think the idea of work-life balance is a bit of an illusion or maybe even a misnomer. And what I've always believed is you have work and you have life. And in different points, they're going to be in different points of balance for you. For example, when I was at Fidelity, I was going between Boston and my family in Toronto. And for some people, that wouldn't be appealing. For me, it let me really focus and get the experience in the US, walk 10 minutes to work, which is a totally different experience. And then I could come home and be more focused on my family and be more present. For other people, that's going to mean different things. You have to be able to say honestly to yourself, and which is what I really tried to do. When I'm at work, I'm going to leave to others. And I was fortunate enough to have the village to be able to do it. And trust in others, including my kids as they've gotten older, that they are fine. And I know that they will be there. I will be their call if they're not fine. And create that open space for them, but be able to be at work and just be focused on it. And then at home, I had rules for myself. Like I would not ever bring my cell phone into my kids' bedrooms. And for me, that physical distance really let me be in the present with them. So sometimes it's the little things. but it is recognizing that it's not really a balance. It's about where you are and being where you are and leaving behind the guilt in that moment.
That's so amazing. And what sorts of things do you do outside of work to help you decompress?
I do a bunch of things. I'm not a deep hobbyist. I have to say, I wish I was. I think it would be really fun to have a big hobby. But the things I do, I love doing yoga. I love being with my friends. My husband and I love entertaining people and having them for dinners. And so all of that is good. I did play tennis till I hurt my knee. And I'm up for learning new hobbies too. So ideas welcome.
And Joanna, what are the skills and characteristics do you think that helped with your success?
It's a big question to say what's helped with my success. People, as I mentioned before, definitely contributed along the way. But if I broke it down, I would say being willing to learn and be a learner. I think I've always had that curiosity. Jeff Bezos talks about that day one mindset. And I've liked to really push myself to always keep that curiosity and that mindset because we're in a changing world that's constantly changing. It's the only constant. And you can really, having that learning mindset, I think it helps. But also part of a learning mindset is openness and openness to feedback. And feedback can sting, it can hurt. But I've always found that being able to be open to feedback and to straight talk and tough love, especially from those who really care about you, has made a big difference for me. The other thing I'd say on the technical side is invest in yourself. And that can mean very different things for different people. For me, for example, I remember at McKinsey, really feeling like one of the steps as I was going to advance in my career was getting better and better at public speaking. That's something that's not natural to a lot of people. And while I enjoyed it, I was intimidated by it and really knew it was going to be important to get better at it and get more confident at it. Like Malcolm Gladwell says, you need that 10,000 hours of practice. And I actually invested in real training. And that was everything from reading books about public speaking and what makes a difference scientifically, as well as actually engaging a firm that worked with me in early days and gave me that tough love and that feedback. And I credit that and tips along the way, which I always enjoy, to really just hone the craft, which becomes more and more important as you're a leader of people.
That's so amazing because I know I totally understand what you mean. It's not very intuitive. A lot of time in university, we don't get the opportunity to present quite often. A lot of it's test taking. So it's amazing that you were able to develop that and work on that skill.
I think it's really always thinking about there is never a point at which you're done as a learner. And what we're going to need, sometimes it's going to be technical. Frankly, a lot of the time, my experience is it's not necessarily technical. And especially as you get more senior and leading people, a lot of the role is about understanding the people that you're working with, understanding what motivates them, making a difference to them in the moment where they need it, and then communicating. And that can be written or it can be verbal. But it's really about figuring and putting a pulse on what's needed and seeking input from others. Because the moment that you do that, you're going to get feedback. It's going to sting for the moment. You're going to work on it and you're going to be better.
And over your extensive career, you hired many impressive individuals. What do you think is more important, marks or personality and a passion for what you're doing?
Look, marks are tickets to the game. Eventually, you stop getting marks and you start just really, moving into the world. And it's, I guess, the equivalent would be achievements. But reality is work, long hours. People want to work with people they're going to connect with and jive with. And a lot of that is that spark, that personality, that passion, that eagerness to learn, even, I would say. And I find when I'm meeting people, especially young people, or if I'm interviewing somebody for a very senior role, if they just have the CV with the achievements, that's nice. But if they show up and they don't have that spark and they don't have that passion and they don't feel like they're going to engage and create that spark and make us better, they're probably not going to be the right fit for the role. So I would say you got to go beyond the marks and you've got to find a way to ignite what your own passion is. And that will infect other people in a really positive way.
And Joanna, as we conclude, if there was one final piece of advice that you would like to share with young women wanting to pursue a career in finance, what would it be?
This is a piece of advice that go beyond finance. I think it really is know your worth, especially, as you're earlier in your career, you're going to have moments where you're going to doubt yourself. Everybody has those moments. trust in your worth, trust in what you bring to the table, and take that step, take that risk, take that plunge. You will not regret it.
Joanna, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This was such an amazing discussion. So thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this, and happy International Women's Day.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sophia. Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Of course. So, Maria, you are the Chief Investment Officer at Sprott Asset Management. What was your path to finance and asset management?
Oh, boy. Well, I've been in finance for kind of a while now, over 20 years. And in fact, when I was in university, like you, an undergraduate, even at that time, I kind of had a vision for what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a portfolio manager. I wanted to be in mutual funds. And I think the biggest reason for that was I enjoyed subjects like accounting, believe it or not, and math. And so I was always good at math. And when I, started reading about the world, and like my dad is an accountant, actually, I think that also played into it. But I kind of also always knew that I wanted to go into that sphere. I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And it happened that out of university, I was volunteering at a mutual fund company in Mississauga, and they ended up hiring me. And then one thing led to another, and here we are, over 20 years later. So I think for me, partly it happened just the way it happened, but also partly I kind of did know I wanted to be in finance and I wanted to be in the financial sphere. I just wasn't sure exactly, like portfolio manager was a good thing to be at the time. But I certainly didn't think I'd be where I am today, for sure.
That's good that you had like an interest and like a passion in finance that you've known from before. And as the Chief Investment Officer, what exactly does that job entail, and what would a typical day for you look like?
Well, I have to say that being a Chief Investment Officer or CIO is just part of my job. My daytime job, as I call it, is still being a portfolio manager. So that means, what does that mean? That means I help, or, I'm actually part of a team, and we manage different portfolios as a team. That means what? I have to look at companies and stocks, and, the company is the underlying, obviously, organization, and the stock is the trading mechanism, how you buy shares in that company, right? And so I meet with companies a lot. I go to conferences to meet with companies. I do mining. We invest in mining companies. That means I also get to go to different countries and visit mines, which is very fun, actually. And I get to meet a lot of different people. So that's kind of my, as I call, daytime job. The overlay of the CIO is where I have a team and I have to supervise that team now. And by the way, this is all very recent for me. It's only a couple years that I'm CIO. So, managing the team and kind of making sure we're cohesive as a team, that's one thing. I also work with our compliance department and my chief compliance officer to make sure that we adhere to the regulations and rules of running portfolios and running an asset management. Now, we don't just run portfolios of equities. We also have funds that invest in metals and other commodities, like we have with uranium, gold, silver, etc. So it's kind of a complicated beast that we have. And I guess my role is to oversee that part of the organization and work with other people to make sure that we are doing things properly. We are adhering to investment guidelines and investment objectives, and just in general that we're, functioning well together and doing everything properly.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a demanding yet super rewarding job position, but I'm sure it is very satisfying when you make a good investment call.
Yes, it's fun. Yeah.
And I'm also interested to know how many countries you visited.
Oh boy, I really haven't counted, but I'll name some of them. I've been as far as Australia. I've been to West Africa. I've been to Latin America, so Peru, Guatemala, excuse me. I go a lot to Mexico, Canada, and the US. Obviously, North America is very big for mining. So a lot of my travel is there, but I have been to some very interesting places. Like, for example, I've been to Morocco, for a silver mine. I thought that was very much interesting and nice to learn a new culture. So yeah, my job is really great in that it allows me to learn new cultures and meet new people.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like an advantage. And what is the process of becoming a portfolio manager?
There's different ways of getting there, but in terms of education, personally, I have a master's in business administration. So I did my undergraduate in finance, or BCom really, in commerce. And then I did my MBA, and I also did my CFA. So that's kind of my education. It's very financial based. Now, you could become a portfolio manager in mining anyway, coming from industry. You could be a geologist and become a portfolio manager. So I don't think there's one set way, but certainly having some courses that help you understand primarily accounting rules, finance, all of that stuff, like, calculating a net present value or discounted cash flows, all of that helps. But I would say that if someone is interested in being a portfolio manager, there's no one way, like no set way of getting there. There's multiple ways to get there.
That makes sense. And throughout your career, have you faced any challenges working in a male-dominant industry?
To be honest with you, I've been very fortunate, and the people that I've worked with throughout my career have been very supportive, and most of them were, by the way, men. So for me, I see the challenges. I have friends and coworkers who have experienced challenges in other organizations particularly, but for me, not that it's not challenging, it's still been hard. You have to work very hard, and you have to be on the ball, and you have to make the right calls, all of that. But for me, I haven't had kind of, to overcome extreme situations, shall we say. So I've been very lucky that way.
That's good. And through your previous experience in the finance industry, what is it you like most about finance and capital markets?
Well, finance is fun. And I think I mentioned some of this already, but to me, probably number one is the people you meet. To be in finance, you have to be pretty smart, let's face it, or else you don't last. Reputation is very important in any role in finance, because you have only one of those. So you have to act with integrity, but you have to know what you're doing. And it's a pretty fast-paced environment, which means you have to make decisions quickly. You have deadlines. You have to deliver on those deadlines. It's interesting because we always joke that we're kind of used to this environment, in that, like, we being people that I work with, that in some other industries, I won't name them, but you encounter situations and you're like, that would never happen on Bay Street or in finance, because people are just, they know if you have a task, you have to deliver it, and it has to be yesterday. You can't dilly-dally, you have to be responsible. So I think that's kind of my favorite part, the people aspect of it. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs. To be in mining, it's a very entrepreneurial job, because you have to take risks. To start a mine is hard work and takes a long time. So you kind of have to be willing to take on risks, like I said. And so the people who are in the industry, they're very interesting people. They're well-traveled, and they're not afraid to go kind of the extra mile. So, that would be my favorite part. But the travel for me also, I think we discussed that already. That's been fun as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like being surrounded by a good support group and just people that you can bounce ideas off of and just work well with is really good. And also the traveling sounds like an added plus as well. And when speaking to people in the finance industry, they always highlight the importance of mentorship. So did you have a mentor? And if so, what did that person teach you?
Well, I guess the most influential person in my career has been Eric Sprott. I have been with Sprott, the organization. Eric is no longer involved with the organization, but he hired me initially, and I've been with the company for almost 19 years this year. So a long time. And he gave me my first chance. He gave me my first job out of MBA. So I'm very grateful to him. Now, he had a few principles. His number one was always work hard. And, it sounds cliche, but it was very true, because one thing in this kind of environment we're in, like I said, you wake up and you have emails shooting at you. You have people calling you, people kind of trying to sell you an idea or, wanting a meeting, etc. And you have to respond, right? So you have to be ready. You have to, as a portfolio manager also, you have to know what's going on in the world economy. So you have to read a lot, right? You have to be prepared. And when people ask your opinion and you're being asked your opinion all the time, you have to have an opinion, right? Be whatever it is. So that's kind of the foundation of it. The other thing Eric taught me was KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And that kind of, I always think of that because, we complicate things all the time, but if something doesn't make sense, you have to go back to first principles and just say, wait a minute, does this make sense to me? And I think about that all the time. And the other thing, Eric being an accountant, by the way, he is a CA, chartered accountant. He taught me the value of math and doing math in your head. And when you're meeting with a company, this is why it's important. When you're meeting with a company, you have half an hour to an hour to make a call, whether it's a good investment proposition or not. You can always go back to your desk and do analysis, and you will do that. And you follow up and you look at the background of things. But in that meeting, in that 1 hour, you have to make a judgment. Is this worth pursuing or not? And to do that, you kind of have to be good at math. I keep harping on that concept, right? So those are the three big things that Eric taught me. I'm sure there's more, but he's just been such a great figure in my industry, in the mining industry, and he's made such an impact on the mining industry in Canada and the world that I can't even name all the things that I learned from him.
Yeah, I think being able to learn and gain knowledge about finance, and like you said, you've gained knowledge on like math and just mining in general from Eric is so important, especially when you're starting out in the industry. Having a mentor to guide you seems really helpful.
And yeah, you just honestly, at the end of the day, it's about people, right? And how happy you are in what you do will be dictated 90% of the time by the people that you are surrounded with. Mm-hmm. So, having a great boss or great coworkers, colleagues, whatever you want to call them, it's very, very important.
I definitely agree. And through your prior career experience, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh boy. Well, I don't know if this is the right answer, Sophia, but as I was thinking about that question today, I thought, if I were to go back to my 20s, obviously I would love that, but I would actually just say relax and have more fun, because things will come. Don't rush things. I tell this to my kids all the time. Don't rush life. Enjoy life. Enjoy your youth. Appreciate your youth. You can always get a degree. You can always get a job, but you can't get that time back. So that would be my advice, actually.
I like that advice. And Maria, what skills or characteristics are needed to be a portfolio manager?
Okay, again, we've discussed a bunch of this, but I would categorize them in three primary categories. Number one, analytical, right? And I've talked about that a bit. You have to make decisions, which means you have to be good at analyzing problems and coming up with a solution or an answer, or yes or no, or whatever it is. Number two is organization. Like I said, things shoot at you very fast. And you have to prioritize what you're working on every day. The day is very short, right? It seems long, but it's really very short. And in analysis and research, being a portfolio manager is essentially being an analyst. So you can go on and on. You can work all day if you wanted to. You can work 24 hours a day. So you have to kind of prioritize and organize yourself and have a roadmap as to what you'd like to accomplish and why, right? And the third one is actually interpersonal communication, marketing, the softer skills. Some people think that being an analyst is, you sit and you read and you analyze and you build a spreadsheet. Well, that's part of it. But the other part is actually selling yourself in the sense that, again, you have to build your name. You have to, if you're a portfolio manager, you have to write articles. You have to make presentations. So those softer skills are very important. And again, you're working with a lot of people. You're working with people inside the organization and outside of your organization. So you have to interact with people on a daily, hourly basis, right? So that's kind of the third one. So again, analysis, organization, and interpersonal are the three that I would highlight. I'm sure there's others, but those are kind of the three buckets that I think about.
I think I like how you organized it into like 3 sections. I think that's very easy to follow. And I agree. I think it's important to have communication skills. And obviously in your industry, it's also important to know like math and stuff, which is also important.
Yes, math is important.
And Maria, as we wrap up, what advice would you give to young women who want to enter the finance industry?
Okay, young women specifically, right? Okay. Well, number one, and I would give this to advice, be it a young man or a young woman, show genuine interest, okay, in the industry, in whatever role you're pursuing. And by that, what do I mean? You have to show that you are, like I said, aware of what's going on in the world. So read the newspaper, right? Read the finance section. Kind of know what's going on in Canada with the economy, employment, whatever it is. And then the other thing I would say is, if you're pursuing specifically a role in investing, then you should invest on the side. Invest your PA. That whole question in the interview, if you had one stock recommendation, what would it be? Well, that's actually, it's a real thing. It does exist. Eric asked me that question when he was interviewing me. So, and I think it still exists now. In fact, nowadays, it's more, it's very rigorous in the sense that you might have to even write a whole case on a stock, right? Or analyze a whole stock. So I would say that's very important. Just having that demonstration of the fact that you are truly genuinely interested and you don't just want just a job, But for a young woman specifically, I would say, don't be afraid. And don't be, we as women sometimes tend to be, not all the ways, but sometimes tend to be a little tentative. And we sometimes think we're not good enough. Well, I would say that you can't have that attitude. You have to really be confident and march forward, because you will be interviewed by lots of men, probably mostly men. And you will work with probably mostly men. Now, that's changing rapidly, which I'm very happy to see, obviously, where we are making progress. But you're still in a male-dominated industry. And from that perspective, just show confidence. And I don't mean overconfidence, but I mean, I'm sure the ladies who are applying for these jobs are great. They're very smart, they're very accomplished, and they know what they're doing. So just having that kind of, chest forward, head up, right? That's going to be important.
Thank you for your advice. I think confidence and curiosity are both important skill sets, like I think you mentioned. And I just want to take the time to thank you for talking with me today. I think I've learned a lot. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Sophia. I'm glad that I was able to share some of my experiences, and I hope it's helpful.
It was, for sure. Hi, Marissa. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you.
Marissa, you work at IG Wealth Management, which is one of the largest asset managers in Canada. Can you provide a little overview of what IG Wealth is and what you do there?
Certainly. So IG Wealth is one of the largest financial services firms in the country, right up there with our largest banks. They have 1 million clients that they serve, and really the work that they do is really built around full financial planning for consultants. So everything from estate planning to tax planning to investment management and beyond. And it really is kind of full service financial planning needs that they take care of for their clients.
That's amazing. Now, before joining IG Wealth, you worked at a much smaller asset manager. Mm-hmm. What are the advantages of working at a large financial firm versus a smaller one?
With large firms like IG or like many of the banks, there's a lot more opportunity to move between departments, right? It's great to get into an organization like that, but there's a lot more room to navigate between departments and business units to really kind of figure out what you want to do. And it wouldn't be abnormal for someone in their career to come into the bank in an entry-level position or come into an organization like IG and really start to move between the organizations, making lateral moves and getting promotions to really understand all the various facets of an industry like this or a company like this. So it's really the opportunity and the space to be able to move and to get different types of experiences that makes it really attractive for someone coming into this business.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And you've been very involved with finance and capital markets for quite some time now. So I want to know, what is it you like most about this industry?
I feel like, to be honest, I originally went to school to be a doctor. So my big dream was to help people through medicine and physical and health and their well-being that way. And then I eventually made a shift over to business and then eventually with capital markets. So to me, it's about, there's a really amazing thing that you can do when you bring peace of mind to people as it relates to their finances and really give people, that confidence. Financial literacy is a I would say is a rare skill set in our country, right? And it's not about having lots of money, but it's understanding money. I always loved being a part of that. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved money. My parents remember me, always trying to find ways, what can I do to make some money? I always wanted to have chores. I always wanted to have an allowance. I had my first job when I was 12 and, so on and so forth. To me, there is a certain, call it comfort and power that comes with understanding money, knowing how to make it, knowing how to save it, knowing how to make it work for you. And even on a grander scale, as I mentioned, being involved with organizations that help Canadians with their financial literacy and their overall financial well-being has always been something that's been very near and dear to me, to be able to give people that peace of mind.
That is amazing. That's such a good point. I love that. And as someone who is really hoping to pursue a career in business, I've been told time and time again the importance of finding a really great mentor. So I want to know if you have had a mentor throughout this process and what that person has taught you.
So the truth is, I've had so many mentors, and they probably didn't even know that they were my mentors at the time, but I've just been so fortunate to work with so many different amazing people throughout my career. And they weren't always, my boss or my superior. These were people sometimes that were colleagues, even people that, arguably, worked under me, that I've learned so much from. I take learnings in different shapes and forms, and I admire skill sets in people. Sometimes things that are my weakness or areas of opportunity, I really seek that out in other people to see how they navigate that. In terms of female mentors, I've definitely had a few. I've worked for a couple small business owners that were women that grew to be, very successful businesses. These were women who were honest with me. They had my back, sometimes told me what I needed to hear and not maybe what I wanted to hear, but really were there to be supportive, regardless if I was working with them or anywhere else, and continue to be kind of long-lasting friends. I've also had mentors who were men, who just taught me so many things about the business. And and then I have friends, people in my circle, people in my community that I just look to for inspiration in different ways. And I think that's been really important for me is, I haven't really clung to one specific person to guide me through this process or to be my guiding light on this journey. I really take inspiration and learnings from so many people because they show up in so many different shapes and forms.
Yeah, it definitely takes a village for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm constantly told that the number one thing is curiosity, just being able to learn from everyone around you. So that's such a good point.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. And that is a characteristic when I've been working with people that I absolutely adore the most is people who have a million questions. When I hire somebody or if I'm going through the interview process or I'm working with someone new and they're not asking me questions, I'm always concerned. Surely you have questions brewing. I admire that trait so much. People who have the confidence to throw their hand up and say, I don't understand, or I want to know more about this, or, what do you think of this? I think curiosity and the desire to continuously learn. I mean, as we get older, we don't learn as much as often as we typically do when we're younger. So we have that opportunity to kind of expand our horizons a little bit and learn a little bit more. I take full advantage. So I do love, and I do agree, curiosity is such an important characteristic and success.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I think it can be hard sometimes because when you're growing up, you're told that like if you ask questions, you kind of sound dumb or you shouldn't be, you should just know everything. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely an adjustment to be able to learn from those around you. So that's great.
I'm teaching my daughter that right now. She's 10 years old. And her teacher said to me, I can see on her face that she doesn't understand something, but she's too shy to put her hand up, doesn't want to risk, looking silly in front of her friends or asking the wrong question or being the only kid in the class who doesn't understand. And so I'm teaching her about being brave and teaching her, you need to know the answer. And I suspect there's a million other kids, not a million, a bunch of other kids in the class who maybe have the same question you do. So, because I notice it as adults, oftentimes we don't speak, we don't ask questions. And so hopefully I can foster that in her at a young age.
That's amazing. And I know there's so many young women watching this conference right now. So I want to ask, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
We do not have enough time for all the advice that I would give my 20-year-old self. But the biggest one is just not to worry about what other people are doing and thinking. People are not thinking about you. I can assure you they're so busy with their own lives. It took me so long to learn that lesson, and it would hit me in the face so many times over that I eventually realized, people are not thinking about me. They're thinking about themselves. I think I made too many decisions in my life to please other people, be it my parents, my teachers, my friends, what I thought society wanted me to do or where I thought how I had to show up to survive in a male-dominant industry, et cetera, name the situation. So, if I could go back and just tell my 20-something self just to go off, follow your gut, do what you think is right. Don't worry about what people say or think or do. They're not thinking about you. And just be a little bit more bold and brave is probably what I would tell myself. I'd also go back and probably buy some Amazon stocks and Apple stocks and all the other stocks that have performed so well over the last 20 years. If I only had the foresight.
Yes, hindsight is 20/20.
It's so true.
Now, you mentioned your mom, and you also have such a successful career. I'm just wondering how you manage to balance your home life and career, because I think oftentimes we think it's one or the other, but you could definitely do both.
Yeah, and so people often ask me about this idea of work-life balance, and I'm pretty bold in saying that I don't believe in it. It's impossible. Balance implies two equal parts, and it'll never be equal, ever. You're lucky to achieve harmony at best. And this is an expression that I heard at a Women's Day lunch many, many years ago. And I wish I could credit the woman who said it. But she said, harmony is what you're trying to achieve. It's just finding a way to make it all work together. And that is what I strive for on a daily basis. Some days it's more work and less family and less play. Some days it's more about me, less about work, and you just have to find a way to make it all work together. You mentioned this earlier, it takes a village. There is no prize for going it alone. There's no prize when you get the promotion at work or, something great happens in your life. No one gives you a trophy for having done it all by yourself. It just doesn't happen. In fact, I have been so fortunate to surround myself with so many amazing people who have helped me do all the things that I'm doing. And the irony is these people, when they love you and care about you, want to help you. So many women do not ask for help. Like it's a badge of honor, like it's part of our DNA. They just think I can do it better myself, or I can get it done easier or quicker by myself. And there's probably some truth to that sometimes, but every once in a while, you also need to know when it's time to ask someone for help and how good it makes someone feel when an established, confident, strong woman asks you for help. You make other people feel good. They want to step in and do their part as well. So I rely on my village in a huge way, and I don't strive for balance at all. I strive for harmony, and I just find a way to make it work through routine, habits. I have a lot of habits. I have a lot of routines. And I just have a lot of people that I turn to ask for help.
That's amazing. I've never heard that before. That's such a good way of...
Well, you can run with it now, and hopefully it'll save you a lot of heartache for the next 20 years of your life.
Oh, for sure. I'm totally taking that with me. Thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Now, Marissa, what skills and characteristics do you think helped make you successful?
Well, I kind of just mentioned a couple of them. I think building routines and developing some really good habits are really important for me. I'm a big believer in holistic success. What I mean by that is, I think I learned early on that even in school, when I was in university, if I'd get really good grades at the expense of everything else, eventually my grades would be impacted as well, right? So if I didn't take care of myself, if my social life fell apart, if, my health, fell apart, eventually that would get to my grades as well too. I'm a big believer in kind of taking care of all the areas. It's back to this kind of concept of harmony, right? So, I'm really focused on my physical well-being, my fitness, trying to eat as well as I can most of the time, exercise, walking, moving, something simple. We're all sitting at desks a lot, studying, working on computers. Moving and getting up and moving around is really important. I also, value my social connections and make time for my friends and my family. I get a lot of sleep. These are all things that have come with age that I realize are really important, but I try not to let any one area of my life get too far ahead of any of the others so that, something's suffering at the expense of something else. I really try to keep them all in check. And again, this is harmony. So sometimes something's going on where something has to take a little bit of a back seat at this moment, but then I try to keep it in check and make sure that I come back to it. So as I've gotten older and I see people around me who have achieved, let's say great financial success, but, their marriages have fallen apart and their social lives have suffered or their physical health has suffered, that catches up to people eventually. And that's not the kind of life I want to live. I want to have it all. And I think it's possible, but doesn't mean you have to do it all at once, all the time, every day. So I try to just make sure I'm doing all the things in all the different areas to find some harmony and success in the different aspects of my life.
I absolutely love that so much because I'm so glad you brought that up. I feel like I've always been told, it's always about the end goal, kind of getting a promotion or getting your dream job. But you're right, there's so many different facets of our life that we need to focus on. I have such great friends, family, focusing on those relationships. You're right, your health, that's so important. So I really admire that. That's amazing.
It ultimately fuels your career in the long run to make sure that you are, thriving in these other areas of your life. I believe that wholeheartedly. And the opposite, I think, is true as well, as I said. So, you never want to, go after that promotion. And all the fun stuff is what happens in the middle on the way to that promotion, right? It sounds so silly, but it really is the journey. Once you've got the promotion, you've got it, but that hustle and grind and the sacrifices and that feeling of getting there and the excitement of achieving it, that's all gone once you get it. And then you're on to the next thing, right? So the journey is the exciting part. So I try to focus on, taking care of all the things to make sure I'm as present as possible, which is so hard. for high achieving people, high achieving women specifically, because we get super focused and we don't always stop to smell the roses. So that's important too.
I love that. That's such a good point. Now, a big part of what you do is sales, and sales is not really something you can learn in a classroom environment. So when you're looking to hire someone, what do you think is more important, getting really great marks or having a wonderful personality and a passion for what you're doing?
It's personality, 10 times out of 10. I've worked with incredible individuals. You know, one of the women that I hired in a previous role, she was a pastry chef. And now she's one of the most successful financial advisors I know. Another woman who was in a role with a local charity doing events, which was just phenomenal. And now she's a CEO of a local foundation. I'm not taking credit for these women's success. I was just, honored and thrilled to have front row seats to their success. But these are women who had all the right stuff and maybe didn't have what the typical journey would be to get to where they got to, or the typical credentials. But got there all on their own merit of everything that they were made of, their character, their ambition, their personalities, and everything else can be taught, right? It's really hard to teach those soft skills, as they say, which I think are more hard skills than they are soft sometimes. It's really hard to teach people to be likable and to be empathetic and to be thoughtful and to have great EQ and all the other things that make people really good at sales. We see it a lot in our industry right now where we know the big wealth shift is coming. In the next couple of years, women in this country will be controlling over half the wealth due to a number of reasons. And we need more women on the front lines, more women financial advisors, more women financial planners. And they make such amazing advisors and individuals to have these conversations. And we need more women to get into this industry because just some of their more natural tendencies, without generalizing in terms of their personality and their traits, really bode well for being an amazing advisor in terms of communication, listening, empathy, all those other great skills that make you really great in sales, but also make you really great with people.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Now, Marissa, you're also very actively involved in the community. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on the organizations you're involved with.
Yeah, I love getting involved in the community, and it shows up a little bit in a few different ways. I love getting my hands dirty in the community and bringing people with me. So there's an amazing local organization here in Guelph called Hope House. And, I love bringing my work teams there to cook food in the kitchen. I love bringing my family there to cook meals. This summer, my kids and I gave out backpacks to families in need, and there's nothing like watching your kids serve people in the community. So any way I can get my hands dirty, but more importantly, I love introducing people to doing good. I love introducing people to, bringing people along to fundraising activities or things like that. It's my absolute favorite thing, and just watching their reactions and how it makes them feel. It's one of my favorite things. So right now I'm on the local hospital board. I'm involved with Hope House. I'm an advisor to a few different charities locally as well. And then I just love to sign up for different activities here and there that I see come up that I think will be really great for my friends and family to get involved with. I have made so many amazing friendships in my community. I moved to the city that I'm in almost 15 years ago. I didn't really know anybody besides my now husband, then boyfriend. And it was through getting involved in the community that I met kind of like-minded people. And from that, evolved amazing business opportunities and jobs and, just really great connections for me in my life, for me and my family. So I encourage everyone to find something they're passionate about and sink their teeth into it. It shows up in many different forms, and there's definitely something each of you has that a charity out there needs. Name the skill sets, be it accounting or event planning or social media or just going to flip pancakes at a local soup kitchen. There's something that everybody has. So I would strongly encourage everyone to find that space in their lives to make time to give back.
Those are incredible points. I know I 100% agree with you. I had a great privilege to go on a service trip quite a few years ago, and I have left feeling so much gratitude. It's the one thing I would say I learned the most on that trip. I think we get so, like you were talking about, you focus so much on the me, And we get so used to this privileged life. And when you go and see how people live across the world, it really opens your eyes to the different ways people live and how many opportunities we have. We were so blessed to be born in such an incredible country. So that's a great point. And now it's so easy to get involved with charities. I know a lot of universities have clubs where you can partake in, and there's so many different ones. So you could totally pick what you're interested in. And they have different roles and responsibilities, like you were saying, if you want to do events or if you're interested in finance. So that's amazing.
It is. And you will, like I said, you'll meet like-minded people. I've made some amazing friendships from just getting involved. I almost challenge people and go find something and see. And if you do something and it's not really for you, try something else. Don't give up.
Yeah.
But, I think this next generation, there's a real opportunity to, you see a lot more kind of charity work being done differently, events for charitable causes. I always say, I used to organize events in university, Party with a Purpose, and we would just, bring in canned good for admission or, bring a couple dollars for this and that. And it always goes over so incredibly well. And, now that I'm a mom, I teach my kids the same things, right? And I see it in them, just how they are starting to think and the gratitude that they have and the perspective. So if an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old can start to figure it out, I think there's hope for everyone else too.
That's so amazing. Now, Marissa, as we conclude, I want to ask one final question. If you have one big piece of advice for young women who want to enter the finance industry, what would it be?
Well, I would say there's lots of room for all of you. And the more the merrier. One of the things I feel like women, sometimes we are our own worst enemies. It's one of the things that I want to see more of. I want to see more of us, lifting each other up. For those of us who are a little further ahead in our careers, reaching back and lending a hand, clearing the path is something that I take very seriously. And it's an opportunity that I love to have, is to be able to help the next gen coming into this industry. But for those coming in, find your space, make a name for yourself by being yourself. Don't try to be anyone else, but exactly who you are. That's who we need in this industry. We need you to show up as you authentically. Make some bold moves, try it out. I think there's so much opportunity to grow in this industry. And I'd love to see more young women give financial services a try. The opportunity that it opens, not just for a career, to make money, to have, that harmony with your work and your life, with your family. There's just so many things that it can provide you. But the future is bright for women in this industry. And, there's lots of room for all of you to get in and get to the top. But, help each other along, because that's how we'll get there quicker.
Marissa, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciated it. This was such an insightful conversation, and I know there's so many incredible takeaways. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a real honor, and congratulations to you in this great event that you're doing.
Hi, Lara. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sophia.
You've had a very successful career working in capital markets. You've worked in sales and trading at RBC. You were the past president in Women in Capital Markets and are now at Delaney Capital Management. Are you able to provide an overview of your current role at Delaney Capital and what exactly you do there?
Yeah, so Delaney Capital Management is a investment counselor. Mm-hmm. And we manage investments for individuals and charities and foundations. So my role at Delaney Capital is client management. So since I started in October, I've been meeting all of our investors and getting to know them and their financial, investments with Delaney Capital. And my second role is development, which means that over time, I'm going to be looking at ways to grow Delaney Capital Management's business.
That sounds like very interesting. And from starting your career working at RBC to now working at
Delaney, so through your experience, what are the differences of working for a larger bank like RBC versus a smaller firm like Delaney Capital?
I think some of the benefits of working for a large enterprise, like one of the large Canadian banks, one of the large asset managers, perhaps a pension fund, is that many times these large enterprises will provide formal learning opportunities, right? That you don't necessarily get working for smaller firms, perhaps like a Delaney Capital Management. Also working in a large enterprise, you get broad exposure to hundreds of different people, obviously, working with a very wide variety of products. Certainly in corporate lending, where I started my career at RBC, I had exposure to, dozens of different lending products, different cash management products. And then, of course, when I moved into capital markets and I was working on the trading floor, the capital markets includes products like public equities, which I was working in, but also fixed income, also foreign exchange, also options and derivatives, structured products. I mean, the list goes on. So working for a large enterprise, you do get exposure to a much wider variety of products and services. So I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. That said, I think if young people decide to make a career decision to work for a smaller firm, you really can take the initiative within a smaller firm to also, design your own learning experiences as well, right? Because ultimately, if it's something that helps individuals' development, it's going to be beneficial for the firm as well.
So to summarize, working for a larger firm would be more beneficial for someone who's younger in order for them to experience multiple job opportunities and gain an understanding of what they're interested in. But like you mentioned, a smaller firm as well, you can kind of pave your own way and find your own path, I guess. And then also working at a smaller firm, it's better for when you kind of understand what you're interested in and you can just narrow down on your job focus and focus on that one thing.
I think that's a great summary. And, wherever you work, whether or not it's a small, medium, or large size company, really, it's important for anybody to take responsibility for their learning path and make sure that you're always staying curious and learning new things wherever you are.
I really like that piece of advice. That is really helpful. And then also, what do you think is you like most about finance and capital markets?
I thought a lot about the answer to this question, and it's really something that has come to me more over the years, perhaps, in the mid to later years of my experience working capital markets, is the fact that, especially working on the sell side of finance and in capital markets in particular, you're really a part of the engine of the economy. Because without access to efficient, broad financial products within a large market like North America, companies wouldn't be able to finance growth. And if you can't finance growth, you're not, you're not developing leading edge products and services, and you're not hiring employees, and you're not, increasing your employee base, right? So it's the fact that you're really in the center of the engine of the economy, and you're helping businesses, whether or not they're in the private markets or in the public markets, grow and expand their businesses. And in some cases, building globally competitive businesses, which many Canadians have
Canadian companies have grown into. So it's pretty exciting, right? Because you are watching companies that perhaps at one time were very small and, growing from, your garage like Jeff Bezos did with Amazon. I think he started Amazon in his garage, to growing it into a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar market cap company, right? And that really is the engine of, the economy. And we're very lucky in Canada to be working alongside one of the world's largest economies, obviously, the US, and in Canada having a very efficient and sophisticated financial market as well.
I really like how you mentioned that it's like the engine of the economy. I think that's a really good way to put it. And it must be really satisfying and rewarding to watch small companies turn into something that can be a global company in the future.
It's very exciting, Sophia.
Mm-hmm. And mentorship has always been highlighted as important when speaking to people in the finance industry. So throughout your job experience, did you have a mentor and someone you looked up to? And what did that person teach you?
Yeah, I really had two mentors early on at RBC. When I first started in a corporate lending program, I had an amazing mentor who was not, she was not too much older than myself, but had a couple more years of experience in the same role. And it was just fantastic to see, a woman, again, not much older than myself, but having quite a bit of success in her role and how she managed her clients. And she also taught me how to build strong internal relationships within RBC to help me better effectively do my job and service my clients. And then when I moved into capital markets, it's a much different working environment. You're on a trading floor. There's no cubicles. You're working side by side with all of your business partners, in pretty small working areas, maybe 2 computer screens. I can't remember if I had a third. I might have had a third. But the gentleman I sat next to for several years when I started on the trading floor was a very important mentor because he had years of experience in the role. He had very strong established relationships with sophisticated institutional investors. And when I started on the trading floor in global equity sales, we were at a stage in the markets in the early 2000s when we were very active with IPOs in what was then the income trust area or sector. And it was invaluable to me to sit beside somebody who I could learn how to analyze and look at prospectuses and really understand, the value of how to communicate those initial public offerings to our clients. So because of the nature of how you work on a trading floor, you really learn quite quickly by listening to all the conversations around you, just again, because you're sitting so close to your colleagues. And then, of course, those were my sales colleagues and the traders that we worked very closely with. The equity traders were only, a few feet away. And so again, like listening to their conversations and how stock was being traded, and if we were putting big blocks of stock up on the desk that our clients were trading, like all of that was such important information for me as I learned my role in the early days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think being able to have someone to look up to and learn from is so important, especially when you're first entering the finance industry. And I think that, for example, the WCM does a really good job at providing students who are interested in working in the finance industry with opportunities through their various mentor programs to have that experience?
100%. They're the mentorship program, the opportunity to network with individuals in the industry, all of those different WCM programs are really invaluable.
I definitely agree with you. And what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Yeah, I thought of two things. One, build your own board of directors and start early. So make sure that you have 3-4 individuals that really you can rely on consistently to give you advice when you're at certain turning points of, either a job search or a certain turning point after you started a new job, and perhaps you're up for promotion, and navigating the promotion process. And then the second piece of advice I'd give my 20-year-old self is, in addition to your own board of directors and individuals that you're really going to lean on for wisdom and advice, make sure within 3 or 4 years of starting a new role, or when you are close to perhaps 2 or 3 years away from a promotion opportunity, or perhaps considering a different role within wherever you are, that you have somebody sitting at the table that will sponsor you and ensure that you're well positioned to be successful in that promotion. So a mentor and a sponsor are two very different things. Your board of directors are really your group of mentors, and your sponsor is that individual who will speak up for you, again, in the promotion process, to ensure that you continue to your career trajectory continues to move higher.
I really like how you kind of sectioned it into 2 different positions. I think that's a really good way to look at it. And also, would you say that LinkedIn and networking is important as well?
I think LinkedIn today is an invaluable tool because, especially as a student looking for an internship, or when you're trying to get your resume recognized and really filtered to the top so that you can get yourself into the interviewing process, it's very important on LinkedIn that you look at your first, second, and third contacts, and you have 5, 6, 7 different points of contact in any organization that will advocate for you and make sure your resume rises to the top, right? So, LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool. It really can accelerate networking for you. And just the fact that, you can engage directly with individuals is one thing. It's not necessarily the number of contacts that you build on LinkedIn, but it's that tool that allows you to connect and potentially have a 15-minute telephone conversation, Zoom, call, perhaps a coffee if that person can make the time. But it's really ends up being the link to that personal connection that's really critical in terms of developing your career path.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that being able to connect with someone on a deeper level and having someone support you and help you throughout your career is super important. So like you mentioned before, having those people that contributed to your success, did you have any skills or characteristics that you think also contributed to your success?
I think ultimately it's performance in your job that is going to drive your success, right? And so it's just making sure that you have a very clear understanding as to, how you're being measured and, what success looks like for your team or for your senior manager or for yourself individually, right? So it's making sure that you're having, conversations that really help you define what success is, and that, you can also define the time frame that both, yourself and your senior manager have defined as, when they want you to achieve that success, right? So I think it's open communication about those milestones and meeting or beating those expectations on a regular basis.
I definitely like how you worded that. So thank you. And over your extensive career, you've had the opportunity to work with and hire many incredible young people. What do you think is most important during the hiring process, marks or personality and passion?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a very competitive job market. And I think especially for roles in finance, hiring managers are going to look at your GPA. So marks are important. But certainly having the grit and the passion and the curiosity is just as important as marks. I think marks and your GPA are just table stakes, quite frankly. But again, showing that grit, determination, curiosity, and, the willingness to want to be a team player and, really contribute to the success of your organization within, a reasonable amount of time is obviously very important.
I've seen that you're involved in a new organization called Women Funding Women on your LinkedIn. Are you able to tell us about this organization?
So Women Funding Women is a collective. We're not a fund, but we're really looking to identify and attract more women in Canada who are interested in being early stage investors in pre-seed and seed rounds of financing for women-led ventures in Canada. Unfortunately, there's a real funding gap for women and equity deserving groups in Canada. I think the stat is in Canada, women-led ventures, women entrepreneurs receive less than 2% of venture funding in Canada. And we really want to change that narrative as an organization and help attract more women, more angel investors to early stage ventures to help really build the trajectory of those ventures and move them from the seed round, the several seed rounds of financing towards Series A, Series B, and Series C rounds of financing, which are mostly more institutional rounds of financing before a company might go and access the public markets.
Okay. I think it's a great initiative, and I think that lowering the funding gap and increasing overall diversity in the finance industry is important. And I think that now more than ever, we are leaning towards diversity in finance, which is incredible. And if someone who is interested to learn more about Women Funding Women, where can they go? And are there any upcoming events as well?
So we just had our launch in Toronto, and I would just really appreciate your community following our LinkedIn page, and we'll let you know when our next event is. I'm not sure when our next Toronto event is going to be, but we hope to have an event in Vancouver in the fall.
As we wrap up, there are many young viewers watching. Is there one final piece of advice that you would like to share with young women who want to enter the finance industry?
Do whatever you can to engage with organizations like WCM and really build your community of like-minded, women in the industry within your organization and outside of your organization. Build that network and that community that ultimately together you can drive each other's success, because it sometimes can feel daunting when you work in, a male-dominated industry where you might not have as many women to bounce off thoughts about career progression or, different promotion, questions or, anything that you face within your, your current and within your current, job scenario. But if you have that network and you build that community, I will tell you that it will give you a lot of strength and a lot of encouragement to stick with it, like I did. Had an extremely rewarding, 24-year career in capital markets, and have now started a brand new journey, after working with WCM for a couple of years in a completely different part of the finance industry with an investment counselor. Very much in the mid stage of my career, but I couldn't have done that without my own network and my own role models and individuals that really, helped me get to where I am today.
Thank you for your advice. I think it's very important for young women to gain experience and just knowledge of the finance industry and just to immerse themselves in as many opportunities as they can. Like you mentioned, the WCM and meeting new people in general too. Like you mentioned as well, like finding your group and your support system. And I just want to take the time to thank you for speaking with me today and for your continuous dedication to encouraging women to pursue finance. I've learned a lot about your journey and your contribution to the industry, and I very much enjoyed our discussion.
I did too, Sophia. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hi, Amber. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You've had a very extensive career working in media at Bloomberg. Can you tell us what exactly you do and what a typical day looks like?
Well, my job in its simplest form is basically just to talk about the markets, to help viewers understand what's going on with the markets and hopefully how they can make a little bit of money or make smart choices with their money. So my day is different because, it depends what are the stocks that are going to be moving. But in some ways, it can be pretty routine. Every day I come in, I have a general idea of what stocks are going to be moving because they either report earnings or there's some sort of event-driven catalyst that was scheduled for that day. So there's kind of few surprises on, okay, what are the stocks I'm going to talk about? And then, if I'm talking about the economy, there are data points, right? Like last week, Tuesday, was inflation in the US. I know that's going to be big because that's a current market obsession. So there's certain things on a calendar I can kind of plan around. And my job is just to go in and kind of read, look through the financials of any given company. Today, for example, NVIDIA reported, and that's like the most important stock on the planet right now. So it's really just about understanding what is happening with the company and what's happening with the stock, because sometimes those are two different things. So it's a lot of research and then filtering that down to how am I going to communicate this in the simplest way possible? And part of my job is analysis, but part of it is just translation. There's a lot of jargon that the financial industry uses that makes it seem really inaccessible to most people who don't speak that lingo. And my job is to really try and make it as clear as possible to viewers, whether they're sophisticated or whether they're more general news audience, what exactly is happening with the markets.
And you mentioned you mostly focus on business, so I'm just wondering what your path was to get there.
So I did business as an undergrad, and then I said, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested in business at all. And so I applied to do my master's in journalism, and I did a 2-year master's at Ryerson. And like all journalism students, I wanted to go and report on social justice issues and all the injustices in the world, or maybe do entertainment. I don't know, something fun. The thing is, there's a lot of people that want to do that, and there's almost nobody that wants to do business journalism. And so I found that it was difficult to kind of get those jobs in the kind of journalism that, quite frankly, everybody wants to do. That's why we're attracted to that field. And so I honestly looked at business journalism. Well, I know a bit about business because of my undergrad. And I think, with journalism, this seems like a natural fit. And so what kind of started begrudgingly has turned into just this very intense passion that I have for only this kind of journalism now. I couldn't picture myself doing general news at all, because there's actually quite a bit of creativity involved in telling business news, because, it's looking at a balance sheet. It's looking at a financial statement and trying to see what's the story here, what's the narrative. And it's also fundamentally quite positive. Generally, the worst thing that can happen is people lose money. And that can be quite devastating. I don't want to minimize that, but often I'm talking about builders. I'm talking about entrepreneurs. I'm talking about how to make money. And that just feels like kind of a happier place to be most days.
Yeah, no, I love how full circle that is, that you started with business school and then now you're reporting on business. And I totally understand what you mean by positivity. I feel like a lot of the time in the media right now, it's constant negative news. So I could definitely see why that's refreshing. Now, it sounds like media is something you're very passionate about. So I want to know what you like most about working in this industry.
There's a real thrill that I get, and that I think most journalists get, about finding information first and then getting to be the one to tell people about it. Doing research and really just not knowing what the story is, or talking to portfolio managers, politicians, CEOs, and really just you're kind of in this process of discovery. What is it? What am I looking for? I'm trying to find something nobody else knows. And then that really magic moment when you find it, and then you get to be the one to, either through an interview or through your own reporting, you get to be the one to tell people. And that's why I'm so addicted to the job, because it brings such satisfaction to kind of be that person.
Oh yeah, that sounds so nice. And I know I've been told this before, it's so important to find a mentor. So I want to know if you've had a mentor, and if so, what that person has taught you.
I've had several, and I will say that one of the beautiful things about where I've worked, and I'm sure, there's been a lot of dramatic shows made about newsrooms and journalism, and it can feel very cutthroat. I never really experienced that. And I think because we are sort of in this niche club of people that, really just want to tell financial stories. And because there aren't a lot of us out there, it doesn't feel as competitive. We all feel like we're working towards the purpose of, how do we help the viewer? How do we help the audience? So I had a lot. I was put on air after only 2 years of being at BNN. And that was because a woman who was leaving, she was an anchor, kind of got in front of our boss at the time and said, she is going to be really great. You should bet on her. So I had her kind of championing for me. I would say that I was put on air like kind of too early. They did take a bet, they didn't take a bit of a risk with me because I was very young. I didn't know. I mean, obviously I know a lot about the markets now. I didn't know a lot back then and compared to what I was being asked to do. So the learning curve was very steep. And I was so fortunate to be around, industry veterans who were really interested in supporting my career. So there was this woman who worked in capital markets for 30 years and was kind of just on air as like not retirement, but just like, oh yeah, I guess I'll go on TV now. And she really took me under her wing, and I really studied at her feet. I wanted to know what she knew, but I wanted to understand how she knew what she knew. So she mentored me overtly, but there were also things just, sometimes it's nice to have an overt mentor, but you can be a mentee just through observation. I watched how she worked and I really tried to emulate it. I found out who are the people she's talking to get the insights she's getting to. And then I would go and, try and make similar type of connections, just really understanding how is it that she's so knowledgeable and how can I replicate that in my own practice. So I was very fortunate to have a lot of women looking out for me, a lot of men as well, but to be in an environment where if they weren't championing me like in a direct way, that I could still kind of sit back and learn from them.
That's such a remarkable story that they gave you a chance, that you had such a group of people supporting you. That's so important for sure. And
I mean, it's certainly, I don't want to be like, it was all sunshine and roses. There were moments I wanted it so bad. And I know it happened quickly. It was over the span of 2 years, but, I cried a lot. I failed a lot. And I just didn't let those setbacks kind of deter me. And I did have them. So I don't want people to, and I made mistakes because I didn't know a lot about the financial markets and I was sort of thrust. And so sometimes I made really big mistakes, total misunderstanding about how like a certain financial instrument worked. And that was so humiliating because, well, not only do the people around me know that it was wrong, but our viewers are so smart. They're not, they're all in the markets too. And so they know when you're, you don't know your stuff. So it was in those moments that there were learnings too. And the fact that I was given second, third, fourth, fifth chances, that I screwed up so many times, but that I showed I'm learning. I'm continuing to learn, and I'm gonna, I'll get knocked down, but I will get back up again.
I love that you brought that up because I think it's so easy to think that the journey to success is a straight one, but it's nice to know that there's, making mistakes builds character and it's about persevering. So that's a really great story. I want to know who you admire most as an interviewer.
Probably Barbara Walters. She, from the time I was very young, there was a news magazine show called 2020. I think it aired on Friday nights, which shows you how cool I was. But I remember as a really young kid just watching Barbara Walters interview people, and it didn't matter the scale or how big of a person she was interviewing. I mean, she's interviewed presidents, she's interviewed dictators, she's interviewed murderers, and then entertainers. Like, she's kind of done everything. And the best part about her interview style was that she always asked the question. She was never afraid to ask the question. She did it in a way that was not, people talk about like gotcha journalism. And I never felt that that's what she was doing. I thought she was always very fair. She didn't let people, though, get away with things in a way that was not, it didn't come off as aggressive. It just always came across as fair. And those are my favorite type of interviewers, people who they're not rude, but they are very clear that they're not here to serve the person they're interviewing. They're here to serve the audience and get at answers for the audience. And sometimes in this business, you can feel like, oh, in order to get a CEO or a certain type of portfolio manager, that you got to kind of play nice and coddle them. And, I'm in the camp where it's nice to speak with you, but that's not who I'm serving. I'm serving an audience, an investor base who doesn't get access to you. And I'm sort of the conduit for information they need to know.
I love that. I really do. And you've been involved with media for so long. So if you could tell your 20-year-old self anything, what advice would you give her?
I think to be kinder and gentler with yourself, and to realize like everybody's kind of faking it. I really felt a bit like an imposter in the beginning. And I was told early in my career, and I was young, I was like 25 when they put me on air. And that might sound old, but it's actually quite young to be put on air. And I remember getting advice on how to be. And they were like, be your 35-year-old self. And at 25, I just didn't know what that meant. And now that I'm a little older than 35, I know what that means. It means just to be sure of yourself, confident in what you know, and comfortable with what you don't know. Early in your career, you feel like there's so much, or this is how I felt, there's so much you don't know. You're so intimidated. You feel like you don't belong. You'll never belong. I don't want to say that was a total negative, because that's really what drove me. That feeling of inadequacy made me fill that in with hard work and competence, and making sure I worked very, very hard to deal with that insecurity. But at 35, I feel very comfortable admitting I'm really good at these things, and these things I'm not so good at, but that doesn't diminish my capability. I feel very confident that the things I'm not good at, I can be good at if I want to be. And I'm comfortable now saying that's just not what I'm into. I'm not comfortable with that or whatever. Whereas when you're 20, you're starting out, you feel like you have to say yes to everything. And sometimes you do, you do have to work hard. But just that confidence piece, especially as a young woman, I would just like to tell her that, everybody is faking it, even the people that seem like they know what they're doing.
That's such great advice. And you have a very successful career, and you're also a mother to 3 young kids. How do you manage to balance both work and family life?
Well, I don't know that I'm nailing it. And I think maybe that's the first thing to admit. The second thing is I have a lot of help. I have a very equal partner in financial sense, but also in the home. Part of my life requires that I'm gone for critical childcare hours. So either in the morning at drop off or at pickup. And if I didn't have a partner who could do pickup or who could do drop off or can trade off in activities, I would not be able to do this at all. So I have a really helpful partner. I have a nanny, and and 2 of my kids. All of my kids are in school. The baby is, only half days and part-time because he's only 2. And I have my mother. So that's a lot of people that help me out. And even with that, I'll say the biggest challenge in my professional career has been being both a mother and somebody who is on air, because even with that help, I feel like, I may be 60% of the employee I want to be, and 80% of the mom that I want to be. And it's just trying to deal with doing both. My kids are also very young, so I know that will change. In a few years, I'll have more free time. Things won't be as mission critical, but right now they're 6 and under. So it's very intense. And part of my journey has been accepting. It's hard when you're a high-striving, high-functioning person that you're not going to be 100% at work. And part of my journey through motherhood has been, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this at the scale that I did before. A, I'm going to be okay with that, but B, I'm going to figure out more efficient ways to work. Where can I cut corners in a way that doesn't affect the outcome or the product? And so that's kind of how I'm managing. A lot of help and being easier and gentler with myself about the fact that I'm not performing in my mind the way I think I could if I had no other responsibilities but work.
And Amber, you touched on this a little bit before, but what skills and characteristics do you think help to make you successful?
Well, I know I said like I would tell myself to be more confident, but I was confident, and I was confident even if I was like faking it a little bit, that this sense of I do belong here, and if I'm deficient in any way, the hard work is ultimately what's going to help me get where I want to go. So there's that. I also knew I wanted to be on air. And so I started as an intern. I had a master's degree, and I'm like filling up coffee for guests and doing like really menial work. And that was disappointing to come out of school and kind of be like the lowest of the low at BNN. But this is like just kind of a small thing. I always kind of dressed like I was going to be on, like I could be on television at any moment. And certainly the job did not call for that. But I am kind of a believer in like, dress for the job that you want, not the one that you have. So there's an element of that. And I'm really lucky, and I'm grateful that I worked really, really hard before I got married, before I had children. Like I pushed, I got myself to a level, because truthfully, when you do have children, it can be harder to push during those times. So at the very least, you can try to stay at the level you're at before trying to reach another level once, things clear up at home, if they ever do. But I'm just, you got to work hard. You really do. If you're goal oriented, if you want to get somewhere, you have to sacrifice, say yes to everything, take on the projects, and just push yourself, because you're not going to get that kind of free time and capacity as your personal life unfolds.
Mm-hmm. No, there were so many good points there. I always hear what you tell yourself becomes your reality. So with the confidence piece, I think that's so true. And the dress to impress part too. That's so great. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it really does help. I mean, as much as it seems shallow and superficial, but if you're a manager looking at, who could, and it's not for necessarily on air, but even just like who's management potential, who could be client facing, look like you can be client facing, because it just makes the manager's decision so much easier, right? If they can already envision you in that role.
Amber, you've interviewed hundreds of people over your career. Are there one or two interviews that really stand out to you?
It's so hard. I'll tell you, the kind of interviews that I love to do is when you can tell someone is off script, is that they're just, in front. Yes, it's business, but when they're just being a human in front of you and telling you, just talking to you like a real person. And I find I don't often get that interviewing business people because they're so concerned about, oh, I have a message, like I'm on message, I'm on this. But I feel like the viewers can see through that as well. It's not genuine. I ask a question, you answer something totally different. It's like tough to have a conversation with somebody like that. So the most memorable are those executives that are super, candid. I'm trying to think of, I recently interviewed Mark Carney, I think about a year ago, and he's great. And he told the story, and of course he's like, the Julia Roberts of monetary policy. He's just like done everything and been at the front row of so many like major financial events, the financial crisis, Brexit, COVID, and he's really a handful of people that the whole world turns to when it seems like, things are falling apart. And so I asked him, like, what is it like in those moments? And he told me this story about during 2008, the financial crisis, and he gets a call from Ben Bernanke, the head of the Federal Reserve. And at the time, Carney is the head of Bank of Canada. And Ben says, very calmly and evenly, says, okay, well, Lehman Brothers is going to go down tomorrow. And so like, this is how it's going to happen. That's huge. It's like a huge bank, and it crumbles and it catalyzes the worst financial crisis of our time. And he's just delivering it very kind of even and deadpan. And Carney remembers this because his wife went on a girls' trip. And at the time that Ben is talking to him on the phone, like very chill, his 2-year-old daughter is like having an absolute meltdown, holding on to his leg, throwing the biggest tantrum as he's like receiving this information. And I just think like, that's such great color. That's so historic. So that's somebody who can just really open up about what, and yes, they did so much to preserve the financial system, but just getting those kind of insights, that's my favorite thing. And it's human. It's the most human thing.
Oh, for sure. No, that's such a cool story for sure. The whole child situation, I'm sure so many can relate. We can relate to that. So
and even the central banker in Canada was dealing with childcare issues.
Uh-huh. And if you could interview one guest, your dream guest, who would it be?
I think right now, Christine Lagarde, who's the head of the ECB, just because she's had a really tremendous career. Also has been on the front lines of some of the worst financial crises that we have seen, somebody that the world has looked to solve them. And, she's one of the few prominent women out there. And so I'm always curious, like, especially about powerful women, about their experience. And I do think it's really important to ask women about their experience. I know some people, I've spoken to some female executives who say, I don't want to talk about being a woman. Like, I'm just a CEO and this. And I think it's insightful for a younger generation. I know it is for me to know, like, how are you doing this? How did you do this? Hearing about nannies and help and all of that stuff, I feel is so important because it eases guilt. And it really gives women, especially, tools to understand, like, if you want to strive to be the best, or the top of your field, like, what do I need to get there?
Mm-hmm. And Amber, as we conclude, if there was one piece of advice that you would like to share with a young woman hoping to pursue a career in the media industry, what would it be?
What would it be? It would be to be your authentic self, because you are enough. Don't feel like you need to change and morph into someone else. I was told very early in my career, my voice is too high. I need to lower my voice. I need to low. And I really tried for a couple of years. Ultimately, it was like, I'm just a woman. I'm a young woman, so I sound like a young woman. And but I still know, my stuff cold. And if like the sound of my voice is is making you feel like I don't, I feel like that's on you. Like I'm not gonna take your bias and make that my problem. And so that's something, to be your authentic self, work really, really hard, know your stuff, Cold. You can't really succeed or get away with it for too long if you don't know your stuff, if you're not the best. So do the work, make sure you do the work. And sometimes you have to do it twice as hard, 3 times as hard. And it's not fair that you have to do that, but you do. And so really, really make sure that you actually do the work and just have confidence. It will happen. Look for champions who can help, champion you. Ask them, how do I get to where you are? And then make it known. Don't be afraid to say, this is where I want to be. This is where I'm going. How do I get there? Ask for help.
Well, thank you so much, Amber, for joining us today. You gave so many good points and advice. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Thank you for your insightful questions.
Hi, Meredith. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Isabella, for having me. Happy International Women's Day.
You run your own firm called Meredith Whitney Advisory Group. Can you provide an overview of what your firm does and what services it offers?
Sure. So I am a research analyst to the core. It shapes everything that I do. So whether it's publishing regular newsletters or reports for individual or institutional investors, or advising companies, or advising boards, or advising institutional investors, it's all rooted in research. So we provide services under that entire umbrella. I also I'm in Washington, D.C. I try to help out with governments. I've advised regulators, central banks, and I want to help. I want to help improve the system as much as I can.
And Meredith, what was your path to finance and more specifically research, as you mentioned?
So when I graduated from college, I didn't even know research existed. So I always say that research didn't get cool until Henry Blodgett, right around the late 90s. But when I found out that research did exist in the early 90s, I knew it was for me. You effectively get paid to learn, and I loved it. So I was a history major in college. I love going deep into data and be able to weave a story out of it. And I think that's really powerful. So I lucked out.
And what is it you like most about research in capital markets?
I love access to information, and you can get information from government sources, from company specifics. It's just it's an endless web of data information. And I love I love studying consumers. I love studying micro data to get for macro trends. It's fantastic.
What skills or characteristics would you say helped you make you a successful research analyst?
Curiosity first and foremost, hard work, and tenacity. And getting along with people is very helpful, because I've made some incredible relationships throughout my career, and that's helped too. But really hard work and curiosity. Because the curiosity makes the drive to learn, this insatiable drive to learn, not seem like work at all.
I love that. And you've had a very extensive career working on Wall Street. What improvements have you seen in terms of women advancement?
Let's see. So I was, when I started on the street, there were a bunch of, I was in my early 20s. There were a lot of women. The women just didn't stay, right? Because they're either left to have families, or they didn't like the lifestyle because it's a lot of hours. And I don't know that that's necessarily changed so much. I think there are a lot more women who've been exposed to what they see and what they want, and so they stay longer. And I think that's probably the difference. You can, it's a great path. And I think a lot of the firms have really made efforts to make the lifestyle more amenable to women having families. It's still very tough. So there aren't enough women, but there are a lot more women, and there's certainly a lot more senior roles. However, when I started, there were women in senior roles. There just weren't a lot of women.
Mm-hmm. And you worked at many large banks, including CIBC and Oppenheimer. Did you have a mentor? And if so, what did that person teach you?
I've been lucky to have a lot of mentors, and taught me the business, taught me one mentor specifically taught me to think really big and read everything. So you never know where you're going to get your ideas from, and don't start with a conclusion. Start with the idea and find the conclusion, because it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what's right. Like what's the best, how you make investors money by being right. So I think turning over every stone to find what's, what real trends are and what the real story is.
And you've had a very successful career. So knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Well, I've always worked. So I've always been a very hard worker. So I don't think I would need to know that. I think that maybe I would say, don't spend so much time worrying, spend time working, but don't spend so much time worrying. And one thing that happened to me at a young age, which I was, again, really happy about, was when I started on Wall Street, I was so afraid that I was, in over my head, that everybody was smarter than me. I still assume that everybody's smarter than me. And that means I work harder and push it forward. And I think that's a great advantage. But I was self-conscious that I didn't know things. And so I was afraid to look stupid. And thankfully, I got over that very quickly, because if you're afraid to ask questions because you're afraid of appearing stupid, you're not going to get any smarter, right? Get over yourself and just learn. And who cares how you look, because at the end of the day, you will be smarter because you ask the questions. So thankfully, I figured that out on my own. But all the insecurities that come with starting from scratch, like, it doesn't get you anywhere, right? But I don't know that I would listen to my 20-year-old self would have listened to me. I had to learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm, for sure. I love that so much. And Meredith, you worked for large financial institutions and now you're running your own firm. What are the advantages of working for a large financial institution versus an independent firm?
Starting out, you want to work for a large institution because they have the best training programs, and you have the most young people around you, and your skill sets, your strengths, and are going to be somebody else. It could be somebody else's weaknesses that you can help them with, and conversely, your weaknesses, somebody can help you with their strengths. So it's a larger support system, and the training programs are more structured. So I would tell everybody to start with a large firm, and then over time, once you have the skill set and the training, you will have the flexibility to go smaller. But I don't think it's a good idea to start out small first.
Mm-hmm. And when you hire someone, what's more important, marks or a passion for what you're doing and a good personality?
I think everything, all of the above, because marks will tell you how somebody's working and applying themselves. I'm not saying that test taking shows how smart somebody is, but marks usually show how much someone's putting into something and how much of a problem solver they are. Let's say you're in a class and you're not getting the A grade that you want. Sit back and audit yourself. Why is that? What's your approach? Grades say a lot. That said, I was not a straight A student, but going back, I think I would problem solve and troubleshoot better to get the maximum outcome.
And Meredith, as we conclude, what advice would you give to a young woman wanting to pursue a career in the finance industry?
I would try to get internships before you graduate. I would not necessarily care, the internships don't have to be at a big organization, but the internship should show that you have applied yourself, and it's easier to get in the door that way. And one thing that you didn't ask me, which I looked at when I was hiring people, is what were their summer jobs, right? Like, how did you look at making money? And it's a little bit of a bias because I've worked since I was 8, but how did you navigate the system so you could get the right experience, but also make money? Because those are the skill sets that an employer in finance should want. I would just try to learn as much as you can, but also get some experience under your belt. And that's important also because you want to know what you like and be honest with yourself about what you don't like. If it's too much of a struggle to adapt to an internship, maybe finance isn't right for you, or maybe there's so many different types of jobs within finance. Maybe you want to try something else out. I mean, I know there's the workload's a lot during the year, but even if you could get an afternoon or an internship, during some parts of your university career, it will help you. It will pay off richly going forward.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate this conversation. You had so many great points, so thank you.
Isabella, I'm so glad you're doing this. Happy International Women's Day as well.